On today's show, the Hawks lose their fifth straight game, losing to the Raptors up in Toronto. We'll touch on all of what transpired, including a wild shooting night from the Raptors, Atlanta's offense, Atlanta's defense, and much more. And all of that is on the way.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1608 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday evening into Thursday, and today's show is brought to you by the folks at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase with Gametime. And also, I should encourage you at the top of the podcast to make us your first listen each and every day. Please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcast here at Locked On Hawks, places like Apple and Spotify on the audio side, as well as YouTube on the video side. It's been a very busy week already for the show, including a sort of a mailbag-driven episode yesterday on Tuesday, game breakdowns, trade rumor stuff, etc. I also had the opportunity to be on Hawks Live and the pregame TV show tonight. Shout out to the folks at Bally for having me on that podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, I did a little bit of a change up on my backdrop. That is still a work in progress at this point in time. But here we are talking about what became a frustrating result for the Hawks, to say the least. A 135-128 loss up in Toronto. This is Atlanta's fifth straight loss. In fact, both teams had lost 4 in a row coming in. Somebody had to lose 5 in a row, and it was the Hawks in this spot. They've not lost 7 of their last 8 at this point, and they're down to 9-14 on the season. It's the first time the Hawks have lost 5 games in a row in almost 2 years. Last year they never did it, and the last time they've lost 5 games in a row was January 7th through the 15th of 2022. So nearly 2 full calendar years ago. It's been a little bit of a rough patch, to be sure, for the Hawks right now. And they led in this game at different points. They were up by 10, 12 points in the first half at one point, and then Toronto had a lot of control of this game in the second half. The Hawks won the possession battle in this one, but lost the shooting battle by quite a bit. And we'll talk about that more in a second. First, though, I should at least lead off with some context and just say that DeAndre Hunter was questionable again in this game after missing the game on Monday, and then he was ruled out before the game actually tipped off. Notably, the Hawks changed his injury listing from right quad tendon soreness to right knee soreness. I don't know much beyond that. They're in Toronto and I am not, but that's a little bit of an eyebrow raiser on some level. But he was out. Jalen Johnson's still out, and of course, AJ Griffin missed this game for personal reasons as well. So the Hawks were without their 2 starting forwards, plus another guy who would have probably played some minutes in this game. So they were definitely shorthanded in this one. And Toronto was close to full strength. That's at least worth noting. And also that's probably why the Hawks were underdogs in this game, according to our friends at FanDuel. There were 2.5-point underdogs up in Toronto. Still, though, I meant what I said yesterday on the show. This is a different game than the ones the Hawks have been losing in previous days, the last couple of weeks, where I've just kind of explained, not saying it was great, but the fact that they've kind of just lost to a bunch of good teams in tough spots, other than the Brooklyn game at home. This game was not that. Toronto is not a great team. It was on the road, but this is a spot where the Hawks should have been at least, equivalent to kind of win the game, and they did not win it in this spot. So we'll touch on all of what transpired, as we always do. If you're a new listener to the podcast, what we do is kind of start broad, talk about what happened in the game, takeaways, observations, etc. Then we'll sort of drill down in the middle of the game about kind of just what transpired during the game flow-wise, and more granular observations. And at the end of the podcast, we'll talk more about the player-by-player evaluations in this contest. But as you might expect, the theme of the night and the reason why the Hawks lost this game was the defensive end of the floor. So the Hawks came into the night 27th in the league in defense in terms of defensive rating per possession, and it got worse by the numbers in this game. They allowed a 134 offensive rating to the Raptors, and the Raptors are not awful on offense, but they're not good on offense either. So that's not a great number. And I have to start with the huge area of shooting, where Toronto shot 58% from the floor in this game and a stunning 18 of 34 from 3. I am well aware that what I'm about to say next is not going to be universally popular, but I feel like it's my job to talk about this. And the Raptors going 18 of 34 from 3 is some unlucky shooting variance for the Hawks. It just is. Now, I'm not saying that everything's perfect. I'll be very clear about that. I'll probably say it again 5 more times. The Hawks did not play great defensively in this game, nor are they a good defensive team this year. They are not. But Toronto is the single worst three-point shooting team in the league on a percentage basis coming into the night. And that's important to keep in mind. They're also bottom 5 in three-pointers per game. They don't take a lot of threes. They don't make a lot of threes. Their season high for threes in a regulation game was tonight with 18. Yes, I've watched them all again, by the way. I've watched all the possessions back since then. And yeah, a few of them were open, for sure. And yes, NBA players make open shots. But not even NBA players can be expected to make in a game 55% or so from 3-point range in a game setting, even if they were all wide open. That would be a very tough ask. And they were not all wide open by any means, and Toronto is a bad shooting team. So normally, I'm not saying the Hawks play great defensively, because I'm not. But normally on 34 attempts, the Raptors will probably make 11 or 12 threes. That's kind of the average, what you would expect from Toronto. On the looks that they got in this game, I'd say the same thing after watching them again. Even if they shot the ball very well, I would say, like actually legitimately well in this game, they would have made 13, 14 threes, something like that. Instead, they made 18, and that is a huge difference. Even if you say, all right, they're going to have a great shooting night and make 14 of 34, they made 4 more than that. That's a 12-point swing right there in a game that was decided by 7 points. So it's not just that simple, but it kind of is on some level. Quinn Snyder after the game said, and I quote, "When a team shoots over 50% from three, probability of you winning the game is not high." End quote. That's very simple, but it's also very true. I don't have a stat in front of me, but I can tell you the stat of basically when a team shoots that well from three in an NBA game, their win percentage is through the roof. It's not foolproof. You don't always win, but you most of the time are going to win. So the last thing here, like a lot of people have replied to just me saying this on Twitter and social media, etc., in frustration and saying that it's every night with the Hawks. And I get all that. This is not different, etc. It is different. I will say this was different. Now, the Hawks' worst 3-point percentage that they've allowed this season in a game as a defense was 48.9%. That's obviously terrible, but that came against Indiana in the infamous game that was played on the moon, basically, in the 150s. And Indiana is one of the best shooting teams in the league. They're top 5 or 6 in the league in 3-pointers per game and percentage. So they're a really good shooting team, and the Hawks gave up 48.9% from three in that game. Tonight, it was over 53% from three to the worst shooting team in the league. That, my friends, is an outlier. I don't care if you believe me, it's true. It's an outlier. Now, again, that doesn't explain everything. The Hawks had other issues in this game, but they basically did what they needed to do in certain areas, we'll talk about more in a second, to at least be competitive in this game. And the big swing, if you look at the stat sheet, if you watch the game, was that Toronto made all their shots. At one point, they made all their shots in a row in the third quarter. But the Hawks did a good job defensively on the turnover margin. They actually turned the ball over 15 times for the Raptors. And that turned into 20 points. They did a very solid job on the glass in this game. They only allowed 24 free throw attempts. It's very solid. None of that is bad. It was just the shooting that really swung this game. And I did flag this yesterday on the podcast about transition and how that's a pivot point and a pain point in this game. And Toronto is really good at running, and they want to run a lot. And that wasn't great in this game, for sure. The Hawks gave up 26 fast break points to the Raptors in this one. They got their usual volume of transition points, but the real problem was in the half court, Toronto made their shots, and especially threes, and that kind of broke the Hawks back. So, again, big picture, especially without Jalen and Hunter, the Hawks are not going to be good defensively on a broad scale. They were better when they played Capella and Okongwu together in this game, which is to be expected. But even when they have Jalen and Hunter, they're not very good defensively. And if you remove, they are objectively their two best forward defenders from the team and from this game. Take them away, and obviously you're playing a team that has their three best players are all forwards. Scotty Barnes, Anunoby, and Siakam are all 6'8", 6'9" forwards, and your two best defenders on those guys are unavailable. So that's a pretty bad recipe in a lot of ways. But Siakam came into the night, as good as he is, shooting 21% from three on the season, and he was 5 of 6 from three. Dennis Schroeder, old friend, 3 of 4 from three. Not a great shooter. So it is what it is. Not any consolation by any means, and Quinn wasn't saying that it was like this is why they lost, but certainly that would have changed the game if the Raptors just had even a fairly normal shooting night in this game. Offensively, much shorter here, largely did their job on offense. A 126 offensive rating in this game, not great on twos, but 44% from three. The Hawks actually shot better than you would expect from three in this game, and they lost by 7 and also got outshot by quite a lot in this one. But something Quinn mentioned as well, the Hawks had 32 assists and 7 turnovers. If you do that, you're going to win more often than not, and the Hawks did not because they could not get stops. The Hawks crushed it in a possession battle. They took 10 or 11 shooting possessions more than the Raptors, but because the shooting disparity was so big, it didn't matter. There was some stagnation in the second half, for sure. I think it's tough to blame the offense overall in this game. And I thought that Toronto did a good job when they had Jakob Poeltl off the court, kind of switching, kind of bothering the ball handlers. Trey cooled off quite a bit in the second half. DeJounte Murray, until a late flurry when the game was kind of out of hand, was pretty bad. He's not great against length usually, and there was a lot of length in the court for Toronto in this game. Quinn talked about having to use more off-ball actions, and that was something that I would agree with on the surface. And the Hawks did get burned in transition anytime that they weren't getting back, but they actually didn't turn the ball over very much in this game. Like, offensively, it was not a perfect game by any means, but again, without two starters, to go in there and score at a pretty impressive clip and put up 27 points in every quarter or more against, again, not a great defense, but certainly a solid defensive team, like, it's tough to blame the offense. It was much more of a defensive loss and, again, a shooting loss in this one. And sometimes it's a make or miss league. I actually, this year, have not done a lot of that. I know in previous years, I'm sure I have listeners laughing right now. In previous years, I will be, I'm eager to point this out when I feel like it's needed to be said. I just say what I think. I don't try to sugarcoat stuff. It's just what it is. If I have analysis and if I have numbers, I'm going to throw them at you. But tonight was really the first time all year that it felt like just an overwhelmingly unlucky shooting performance against the Hawks. A lot of times it's their defense, and certainly that plays a part in it. But no defense can overcome what Toronto was shooting tonight. It was not all about the Hawks. Let's just say that at the very least in this game. All right, we'll have more coming up on this contest, including the ins and outs and the observations and all of that fun stuff. But first, a word from our sponsors on the show. Today's show is sponsored by eBay Motors, and our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy basketball picks each week, all season long. Whether you're preparing for daily draft or scouting the waiver wire in your fantasy league, every single week we'll provide you with some players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster from eBay Motors, and that's why Josh is picking out this week's edition of eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And as always, Josh has a full list of guys to highlight. This one we'll pick out today is going to be Isaiah Hartenstein from the New York Knicks, the big man. Josh notes that Mitchell Robinson is going to be out for quite a while, and while Jericho Sims is also in the mix at center, and with Taj Gibson also now there in New York, Hartenstein is the best player of that group, according to Josh and according to me. He is the best rebounder in that group. He's very good on the glass. He brings some help in steals and blocks in your fantasy league. He's also very efficient around the rim, a career 58% shooter from the floor, and it's not every day that you can grab a starting quality center off the waiver wire in fantasy basketball in line for big minutes without Mitchell Robinson. They're going to have to lean on Hartenstein a lot, and I've always liked him as a real basketball player, and Josh thinks he's undervalued in fantasy right now as well. So target him according to Josh. And again, Josh Lloyd, Locked On Fantasy Basketball, is going to help you win your championships all year long in fantasy basketball, and eBay Motors knows the championship teams are built, and they're all about each individual player being a perfect fit for that roster. It's the same for your vehicle, by the way. I'm on the road for a lot of different things, including for work stuff, going to Hawks games, etc., all over the place. And there'll be times where I've actually needed to find upgrades for my car, or even just to fix a part or two to keep things running and on track. eBay Motors is the best possible place to do all of that with over 122 million parts for your number one ride. You can make sure your car, truck, or SUV, etc., stays running smoothly. They have brake kits and LED lights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your vehicle happens to need, eBay Motors will have it covered for you with eBay Guaranteed Fit. It's also guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you'll actually be burning rubber and not burning cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That is ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, back into the observations of this game, and at the top, I'll just say this. They started Wes Matthews instead of Garrison Matthews after what happened on Monday. I would have done the same, probably. Bogey is the other option there, and I do understand why you might want to start Bogey, because Bogey is the best player of this group, but there's something to be said to have Bogey off the bench, so I think Wes Matthews defensively, a little bit more length, and Quinn talked about this too, like the Hawks, even with Wes, like obviously he's undersized, he's a better defender than Garrison or a lot of other wing options, but they were very small, and they are just legitimately, I'm not one to kind of put points of size too much, but the Hawks are really, really small on the wings right now, compared to especially a team like Toronto that has Siakam, Anunoby, Barnes, etc. But still, West did a fine job defensively. They got down 15-8 out of the gate. Capella and Murray actually started the game well on offense, but everybody else was kind of cold. The first 7 buckets of the game from Toronto actually, ironically, were actually at the rim. That kind of stopped for the most part. But worth noting at the top, rotationally, it was actually only an 8-man rotation for the Hawks in this game. And that is a surprising figure for a game in December. But the combination of the injuries that the Hawks had, again, their starting wings, starting forwards out, plus AJ Griffin, who played on Monday, that led to them having a choice between just using these 8 guys or going a little bit deeper into the bench with Seth Lundy or Trent Forrest or maybe even Bruno Fernando if you want to play Okongwu more at the 4. But anyway, it was an 8-man rotation in this game. Bogey and Okongwu were the first subs as usual, but not in the usual way. In fact, Okongwu played a lot at the 4 in this contest. Capella played 34 minutes. Okongwu played 30 minutes. That means they shared the floor for 16 minutes. That's way more than they ever have in a single game. In fact, Okongwu, I think, played something like 17 minutes in a row in the first half, like a crazy amount of time in a row. And intentionally, the Hawks, I think, wanted to keep those two big men together along with some shooting on the perimeter. So that makes a lot of sense. Okongwu actually let the three-point shot fly in this game. Spoiler alert, Okongwu had his career high in threes in this game. He made 3 out of 5. He was eager to shoot those shots, and he kind of has to if you're going to play him with Capella and have him play more at the 4. The Hawks had their biggest run of the game late in the first quarter, a 14-2 push after being down for most of the quarter. Trey was really, really good in the first half. Had a jumper at the buzzer to kind of have that lead go up to 8. The offense was excellent in the first quarter, 12 assists and no turnovers in the first. And Trey was really on fire. In fact, I think he had 8 of the first 11 in the second quarter as well. I think he accounted for like 37 of the first 50 points in the game. Four of the Hawks did Trey. Okongwu didn't foul a lot. That's actually a notable thing despite playing all those minutes. He was able to stay on the court. It's a little bit easier when you're not the primary backline defender, but he had no fouls in 30 minutes. And that is a shocking and encouraging development if you are the Hawks. A weird sequence in the middle of the first half where Bogey got called for a flagrant 1 that was not really a flagrant 1 in my opinion. It was a normal basketball play to me. It was upgraded for reasons. Then the next minute or so, Chris Boucher of the Raptors got a technical foul for flopping. So it was kind of offsetting but kind of weird. Defensively, there were some mistakes for sure. Okongwu fell asleep on one that allowed a Siakam layup. Trey missed a layup and then didn't get back for one. A couple of nice blocks by Capella late in the first half, but that was kind of it. Hawks were up by 2 at the half, despite being up by 12 at one point in the second quarter, and that kind of burned them later on in the game. Trey had 20 and 10 in the first half of this game. Only second player in the entire NBA this year to do that in a half, and the third time in his career that he's done that in a half. That's a special thing that not a lot of guys can do. But defensively, it was kind of more of the same. In the third, it was basically the Raptors taking control and never giving it back. A 13-4 run by Toronto to open up the second half, put the Hawks down by 7 points. Also, there was a 3 wipe off the board by Trey that was a kind of a borderline offensive foul call. Hawks were down by 9 at one point mid-quarter. But as I go back to this a little bit more, Toronto made their first 8 threes in the third quarter. 8 threes in a row in the third. And at that point, they had made 10 out of 11. They were shooting 59% from 3 at that point in time. They had 30 points in the first 8 minutes of the third. And that blitz definitely hurt things. The Hawks did come back. Bogey hit a contested 3 that was a big shot. And by the way, while we're here, Bogey now has the franchise record for the Hawks for consecutive games with at least 2 threes. He's now made at least 2 threes in 18 straight games. A crazy run for him. But then Trey missed a couple jump shots late in the third quarter as he kind of cooled off again. And then Toronto hit a 3 at the buzzer to go back up by 8. And that definitely hurt. Just as a reference point, Toronto makes 11 threes per game this year. They made 9 in the third quarter, including 8 in a row. So that kind of tells you, again, some of the outlier stuff that happened in this one. I thought Okongwu had 2 big blocks, actually, in the beginning of the fourth quarter, but the Hawks just couldn't score for a little while at the beginning of the fourth. That was the one time the offense kind of let the defense down in a little bit of time. There was a big swing, I thought, mid-quarter out of a timeout where Bogey got 2 steals in a row, made 2 threes in a row off passes by Trey, and that cut the Hawks the deficit down to 2 in a hurry. And I was like, all right, they're back in this thing. They're feeling good. And then within a minute, it was back to 8 because Trey got blocked twice in a row on floater attempts. The first one kind of was not really his fault. It was kind of shot clock induced. He kind of had to go quickly and couldn't really hide the fact that he had to shoot it. But then the second one was not a great shot at all. And they both led to transition runouts for the Raptors and buckets for the Raptors. And that led to the Hawks being down and kind of scrambling the rest of the game. Out of a timeout, Quinn went a little bit more offense, going with Bey instead of Okongwu, which is something that he usually would do. I don't hate that decision in general, but Quinn tends to lean offense when they're trailing. And that's a lot of coaches do that. I'm not picking on that. It's just kind of why that happened, I think. But the Hawks were never really back in the game in full. They were back within 6 at one point with about 1:10 to go. That was the closest they got. And then the Raptors got a pretty easy jump shot by Scotty Barnes over DeJounte Murray to kind of end the game, at least in my mind. They were down 6 again later on, but trying to scramble and press, etc. It was never really particularly close. So as close as the game got, they were within 2 with, 6 minutes to go, something like that, 5 minutes to go. And then everything else was kind of Toronto down the stretch until a couple of, DeJounte made a couple threes. Kind of puffed up his own numbers in this game, honestly. But Atlanta was kind of just on the wrong side of things from the beginning of the third quarter on, and they were right there, but they were not like, it wasn't like this was a game that was in the actual back and forth down the stretch kind of thing. They were down for the vast majority of the second half of this one, and there you go. So we'll get into all of what kind of transpired, big picture on the player side. But again, like, I think this is a game where the Hawks did enough on offense, not enough on defense, and they were not perfect on offense by any means. Like, there were a couple of staggering moments, especially from, I thought Trey kind of cooled off. I thought DeJounte was not particularly good till the very, very end of this one. And then they got very little from their wings other than Bogey in this game. So we'll talk about that more in a second. But first, a word from our sponsors on the show today. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. You should never have to worry about buying a ticket to a big event, and with Gametime, you actually never have to worry because they have last-minute deals on tickets for football or basketball or baseball, hockey, concerts, comedy, theater, and many more. And it's really easy to navigate the app at Gametime to find and buy tickets for any event in your area. They're also obsessed at Gametime with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. They have zone deals for an average savings of 18%. And at Gametime, you see all the views for the seats there in the event. They're actually in the venue they're going to look for. That's you know exactly what you're going to be getting and what you should expect when you arrive. They have all-in pricing at Gametime as well. Your total up front without any of the hidden fees some other places might happen to have. That's an awesome perk for me anyway. And you also have peace of mind with Gametime. They have the Gametime guarantee, and that means that you always get the best possible price with Gametime. Take all of the guesswork out of buying tickets right now by using the Gametime app. Download the app right now. Create an account. Use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase with Gametime. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off with Gametime. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, and to the players in this game, we'll start with the bench. And again, probably a shorter segment here because only 8 guys played in this one. A very short bench. I would not have minded them trying Seth Lundy. They brought him up from College Park for depth, given the Hunter injury, which makes sense. But they clearly didn't want to go quite to that level. I think he would have been the guy I would have called on. Trent Forrest is just so small. At least not at point guard, but certainly on the wing where he would have been playing tonight. So I didn't mind it, but they were definitely small everywhere. Garrison Matthews played 19 minutes. 6 points on 2 shots, made both of his threes, two rebounds and an assist, and a steal for Garrison. I actually thought he was pretty decent tonight. He was better tonight than he was on Monday for sure in a smaller role, but got to make shots and he made them. Still only taking 2 shots, and for him, it's kind of a delicate balance. I know he's not going to be a primary option, but I think that I want him to shoot more than twice in 19 minutes if he's going to play that much. But he played pretty well, I thought, actually. He was competitive off the bench. Okongwu had a good game. 13 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal for Onyeka. Hit 3 threes. Again, that's a career high. 2 of 4 from 3. Sorry, for 2 of 4 from two-point range in this game. I don't think he was dominant, but I think he and Capella worked together on the 4-5 units in this game, and that was very helpful, I think, on the whole for Atlanta's defense. And then offensively, Okongwu did enough to kind of space the floor to make that viable. Bogey played well again in this game. 20 points, 5 assists, 3 steals, 3 rebounds. He was 3 of 6 from the 2-point range in this game, 4 of 7 from 3. I said it on Hawks Live tonight, actually, on the TV side, but I think Bogdanovic might be my personal leader in Sixth Man of the Year right now if I had to choose one. Obviously, it's coming off of 2 big games in a row for him, but I think his overall play has warranted that. And does it matter a ton right now to Hawks fans? Probably not, but I think he's right there. He's been playing very well, and the bench was pretty effective in this game on the whole. To the starters in this one, Wes Matthews was pretty quiet. 14 minutes for Wes, 2 steals, 5 points, had 2 rebounds and 1 assist. 1 of 4 from 3, 0 of 2 on 2s. Same story with Wes Matthews. Offensively, he doesn't give you a lot very much at all, really. That's just the reality. And then defensively, he's okay, but he is small to be dealing with Pascal Siakam or even OG Anunoby or Scotty Barnes, but especially with Siakam, and that showed up in this game, I thought. I thought he gave them competitive minutes and was one of the better options, but not a great one defensively in that spot. Sadiq Bey, kind of a weird game. 12 points, 10 rebounds for Sadiq, 2 steals as well, but 5 of 14 from the floor, 0 of 5 from 3. Just didn't make shots in this one. Most guys, the Hawks shooting was fine, but it wasn't overwhelming, and Sadiq was not great. I'll give you the stat now. The combination of the 3 starters at shooting guard, small forward, and power forward for the Hawks in this game, Murray, Bey, and Matthews, had a really, really rough shooting night. Now, Murray made 2 threes at the very, very end to kind of make this look better, but the 3 of them did not make shots, and that definitely hurt them along the way. And I thought Bey competed defensively, but obviously is pretty limited defensively with his lack of length, lack of burst, and lack of awareness off the ball. Capella, I thought, had a pretty good game overall. 17 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 blocks in 34 minutes. Better in the first half than the second half, like a lot of Hawks were. And when pearls on the court, I liked what he did better. I was a little bit surprised by this. The Hawks, it seems like, at least according to the box score, what I wrote down, played Capella and DeJounte the exact same minutes in this game, like the same time the entire way. And normally, you don't want to pair DeJounte and Capella. They're not the best pairing together. I don't know if that was intentional or just kind of the way it broke down. And obviously, limited options here with Hawks trying to play 8 guys and trying to play 2 centers together, etc. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt there. But I don't love tying DeJounte to Clint. But I thought Clint was pretty good on the whole. He had one possession that, of course, got everybody riled up where he missed a couple of layup opportunities. Not really layups, but like tough shots at the rim. And he should have passed it out probably. But anyway, I thought Clint was, if you could see the forest through the trees, was pretty good in this game. DeJounte, speaking of which, 20 points. But I think 8 of those, maybe 6 of those at least, were in the last 2 minutes when the game's kind of over. He didn't play very well. If you watch this game, I think you probably know what I'm going to say. He did not play well, I don't think. If you didn't watch the game and you see 20 points and 5 assists, it's like, oh, he played fine. He shot the ball fine. Yes, but if you watch the game, he didn't have any juice in this one. He wasn't getting anything going to the rim. I think that he was bothered. I'm sure he wouldn't admit this, but I think he gets a little bit overwhelmed at times, or maybe just physically overwhelmed by the length of a team like the Raptors. You know, obviously Anunoby's a great defender. Siakam is long and a good defender. Barnes is at least long. Schroeder's active. Like, they have a lot of guys to throw at you, but DeJounte was kind of just felt like a non-factor in this game, which can happen. I mean, it's unfortunate, but as much as the offense was pretty good in this game, he was not until the very, very end. Yes, credit to him for making 2 big shots at the very end to keep them kind of alive in their comeback bid, but it was pretty much over, and he was not very good before that. And then Trey, 2 halves kind of. Like, first half, he was almost perfect, honestly. 20 points, 10 assists before halftime. Second half, still had a pretty big numbers. 15 and 7 after halftime, ended up with 35 and 17. But I think he missed, I want to say, 8 or 9 shots in a row at one point in the second half. He was pressing a little bit, not getting to his spots quite the same way. A couple of settles that I thought like were makeable shots for him that he just didn't make, like, you know, deep threes, etc. It's okay to have that happen. He was still, on the whole, good offensively. He was kind of controlling the game offensively, but once he wasn't quite as lights out in the second half, the Hawks' offense did dip a little bit. But I think he was not the problem, let's just say, in this contest. So, all that said, again, 8 guys played. They were pushing to win this one, for sure. They didn't win it. From here, by the way, no one's leaving. The Hawks play Toronto again on Friday. And an urgency situation for Atlanta. We'll see who plays in that game. We'll see, especially Hunter. Jalen Johnson still has not been reevaluated. His reevaluation timeline isn't until this weekend at the earliest, so I don't anticipate him being back by Friday. By the way, the Hawks play again after that on Saturday, so they're going to have a little bit of maybe navigating things there, but we'll see on Hunter. If the Hawks have somebody back between Hunter and Griffin, preferably Hunter, of course, that would help them on Friday. Also, not a typical road game, and that they will have been in the city for 2 days, so probably a little bit more of a neutral playing field, and I think if I had to guess, to bring things full circle, the Raptors are not likely to make 18 of 34 from 3 on Friday, so we'll see if that happens. Maybe it'll happen again and I'll look stupid. But anyway, that's a winnable game again, as I said it was tonight, and the Hawks will be urgent. Like, they have not lost 6 games in a row since November of 2021. It has been more than 2 years as the Hawks have lost 6 games in a row, so they can try to avoid that on Friday night. And look, they got to get some wins. It is what it is. People keep asking me big picture questions. I talked about this a little bit on the show yesterday, and if you missed that show, I encourage you to listen to it. Some mailbag stuff, talking about, you know, trade stuff and big picture and how to handle the roster. With every loss, though, it's going to be a little bit louder and louder about, like, what is the plan moving forward. And I'm not reactionary to that, but I think if you're a team that's obviously trying to win now, and the Hawks are kind of built to win now, being where they are in the standings at 9-14. Look, they're only a half game out of the play-in right now. Like, the season's not over by any means, but they're not playing well. And we'll see how they fare on Friday. If anything happens Thursday, I'll probably do a podcast. But if not, I might hold off until after the game on Friday, given that there's a back-to-back coming. But all that said, you have a mailbag sort of evergreen-ish podcast from Tuesday. Listen to that one if you would like to. Please subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts. Places like Apple and Spotify on the audio side, also YouTube on the video side. There is some bonus content on the audio-only feeds of this podcast. So if you're a subscriber to Spotify, Apple, etc., you will be hearing some shows, if you'd like to, from the Locked On Sports Atlanta folks, and also the Locked On Podcast Network. So if you want some extra content, that's there for you. Nothing less from me. I keep saying that, but I want to make it very clear that I'm still here doing my normal stuff. But subscribe to that anywhere you get your podcasts. Also follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. I also write about the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. I I appreciate all the questions from yesterday. If you want to write in some questions, you can also fire those to me on Twitter or at lockedonhawks@gmail.com. Or if you want to leave a 5-star review in the Apple Podcast store, you can also leave a question there that I will try to get to on a future podcast as well. So all that said, thank you for listening to the podcast, everybody. I really do appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you at the very latest after the game on Friday.